Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman or God, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, to all the sages and saints, and to each of you, divine soul, watching today's satsang. So today we will be starting Sutra number 22 from the Kaivalya Pad of the Raja Yoga Sutras of Patanjali Maharaj. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda ji, and narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. Sutra 22, Kaivalya Pad. It is Chittehe aprati sankramayas tata akara apattau swabuddhi samvedanam. Again, Chittehe aprati sankramayas tata akara apattau swabuddhi samvedanam, meaning though the Purusha is the self or the conscious being, is free of actions and modifications, yet because of being identified with that chitta, it is able to know its own chitta. So let's try to explain this in more detail. It means, because this is a complex sutra for us to digest, so let's try to break it down. A doubt may arise that if the Purusha is unchanging and eternal, that we say, then how can it know the chitta? If it is constant and a witness, how does it know? Because by knowing the chitta, the Purusha must allow itself to be involved in the function of knowing, and this would render the Purusha subject to changes. So this is sometimes an objection that comes in the minds of aspirants, that if the self is totally unattached and totally constant, how can it know of the changes that are happening? So this sutra explains that the Purusha knows the chitta by becoming identified with it. It is similar. So how is it? It is again like we had covered this in a few sutras before also. It is similar to the sun being reflected in a mirror and illuminating objects inside a room. Though the objects are illumined by the reflected sun within the mirror, the reality behind the reflection is the sun that abides in the sky. So that is how it is being explained, that when the reflection of the sun is coming on the mirror is now taking that reflection and further creating a reflection in the room, and there comes light, whereas it's really coming from the sun, not from the mirror. But for now, the effect is that it looks like the mirror is giving the light. So this is the appearance of also what happens through our inner functions of the self, where the image looks like it's coming from the self, but it is the reflection that is creating the image, not the self itself. So the reflection of the Purusha in the chitta causes the perception of the chitta and its functions. But the Purusha or the self is itself ever unchanging and eternal. So it's very, very true that the chitta is constant and it is unending. And if once that chitta, the self itself decides to leave, or Purusha, then we are basically pretty dead. We can't work, we can't see, we can't talk, we can't touch, we can't taste, none of it. All those things are happening through the command of the self itself. And that is the essence of this sutra, that although unchanging, its reflection is the one that is running this illusion. In other words, the chitta that has reflected the Purusha brings about the duality of seer and seen. In reality, the Purusha is not the seer or knower or experiencer. It is the pure consciousness itself. And this is why when you know this self, that process is called self-realization, God realization, mukti, nirvana, connecting with God. At that time, once you do that, you have forever terminated the cycle of birth and death. You are no longer an average human being. To become Brahman, to know Brahman is to become Brahman. Therefore, you have merged into that cosmic consciousness. Even though your body is here and you are experiencing all these things in the world process, but your perceptions are very different from an average person. That is the essence of this sutra. As you can see, it's fairly deep, and sage Patanjali has gone into deep thoughts and even questions that may arise in the minds of people, and tried to answer them for us. So, how grateful should we be to these holy sages and saints and these wonderful scriptures? So, this is why I do what I do, to share these things with each of you. And if you're finding them helpful, again, please share, subscribe, comment, and do as much as you can to spread this wonderful, deep, gracious knowledge of our ancient sages and saints. And when we do that, we are also helping humanity, because there is so much pain and stress in this world. People don't know the art of being happy. They may have money, but they don't have peace, and they don't know the whole purpose of their life, which is what these scriptures aim to guide us about. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.